welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. on this Friday, May 21st. And we are discussing the very positive implications of the German ban on naked credit default swaps. It's a demand that I've raised repeatedly. I welcome the fact that the German government has implemented what I've been calling for, at least in part. I wish they'd go further now. Ban all credit default swaps. Ban all synthetic CDOs at least, and better yet, all CDOs, since the damage done by these is essentially infinite. And it's working. Ever since this has been instituted, the euro has been going up. Right now, Friday afternoon, early Friday afternoon, the euro, $1.25.65. So $1.25 and 60. So $1.25 and 2/3 cents will buy you a euro. And when this was instituted, it was down practically to 121, 122. So the euro has stabilized. Not that we're so interested in bidding up the euro, but to avoid stability, to maintain stability, and to avoid a cataclysmic, chaotic breakup of this, that's a reasonable goal, and looks like it's working. Now, some would argue that there's also this massive short squeeze going on in the background. Well, it's perfectly possible, but let's look at it this way. There is no point in fighting the speculators with trying to fight some of the fundamentals. In other words, the Greek austerity program is worse than irrelevant. It's absolutely destructive. It destroys Greece's ability to pay. You don't convince speculators, right? You don't regain the confidence of Bonnie and Clyde and Dillinger and Ma Barker and the various hedge funds, the Leach Fund and the Jackal Fund and the Hyena Fund. You can't convince them of your own financial responsibility by balancing your budget or some other piece of monetarist garbage in the middle of a crisis like this. What you've got to do is counterattack those hedge funds. You've got to put fear into them. And anything that increases the climate of fear is welcome. And indeed, just the idea that the hedge funds believe that the European Central Bank and possibly some others, the Bundesbank and so forth, the widespread impression that a large short squeeze is now being organized is a positive effect, whether it's true or not. And nobody really seems to be able to demonstrate whether it's true. I would recommend it. I've called on Russia Today and elsewhere in various commentaries. When you see a bunch of speculators attacking you, you use the resources of your finance ministry or of your national bank, whatever form it has. You massively buy the asset that they are trying to destroy. You jack up the price by 10 or 20%, and you bankrupt the hedge funds that are taking you. And that was what I recommended during the oil crisis there in the summer of 2008, right? As oil approached $150 a barrel, I said the obvious thing to do is essentially two things at that time. One is make a massive release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to drive the price down and dump oil as much as you can, and you'll bankrupt some of the hedge funds and zombie banks that are attempting to jack the price up. And then don't bail them out once they're bankrupt, because they'll come to the public trough and demand to be saved. So if Monsieur Trichet and old Axel Weber there at the Bundesbank, if these characters are managing to mount a short squeeze against the hedge funds that are attacking the euro and the Greek bonds and so forth, so much the better. Now, there was this hedge fund congress in Las Vegas this week, and we had a parade on CNBC and Bloomberg, a parade of hedge fund hyenas and predators come forward to say that they're frightened and that they're engaged in de-risking. Now, whether this is true or not, we cannot tell, because these are people who trade on duplicity and lies. But the hedge fund people say that it's time for de-risking, that there's a huge short interest in the euro, and that this may be now subject to a squeeze. Yes, let's hope it is. Let's hope that some of these hedge funds are wiped out as a consequence of the fact that they bet wrong on the euro. If you could get the euro up another 5 or 10 cents, you would wipe out quite a few of these hedge funds. Some of the hedge funds that attended that meeting at Monness, Crespi, and Hart back in February 8th, Soros Fund Management, SAC, Greenlight Capital, Brigade Capital, Paulson and Company, who may or may not have been there, and so on. So yes, do that. But just the climate of fear, the idea that hedge funds are afraid, is a very beneficial result of this. And again, the Germans would be well advised to take some measures against the hedge funds and anticipate the planned European regulation, because the European regulation takes too long. It's too slow. And when you're going to do something like banning naked credit default swaps, you can't tell people in advance and let them unwind their positions. You've got to do that. Basically, it's better to do it with no advanced warning. In other words, this press release says, as of right now, this instant, or as of 5 minutes ago, these things are illegal. So the Germans essentially did about as well as you could expect. But any idea that they should have given notice and then days and days of interminable bureaucratic procedures in order to get this through, this is all nonsense. The thing is to attack the hedge funds and do it as fast as you can. Now, in terms of the personalities, Merkel, somebody we've been very critical of, one of the reasons she's doing this, of course, is that she has, on the other hand, gone into this very foolish, reckless, irresponsible trillion-dollar bailout fund, right, which seems to exist primarily as loan guarantees. She has now obtained the approval of the German parliament, the Bundestag, to this morning. I think this is not a good idea. It's the wrong way to go. At the same time, she felt that in order to get the votes of the Social Democrats and some others in the German parliament, she had to offer the sweetener of, on the one hand, the banning of the credit default swaps, the anti-speculation measures, and that they would talk about a Tobin tax, that the German government would be more emphatic on the Tobin tax and the coming of the hedge fund regulations. Okay. Schäuble, the German finance minister, now Christian Democrat like Merkel, in his case you can see the guy's an authoritarian. He's been interested in the erosion of civil liberties. Well, fine. Rather than turning him loose on the German people with his civil liberties strategy, let's let him use his authoritarian mentality and turn him loose on the banks. That's essentially what's been done. This is the guy you see in a wheelchair. He was attacked by, somebody who was then judged to be insane in 1990. He's been in a wheelchair ever since. The details on this story we can't really go into. But there he is, Schäuble, very unlikely candidate. He's been to a Bilderberger meeting or two himself in his time. Nevertheless, the logic of the national state is that at some point the institution, national self-defense, take hold, and they strike out against the hedge funds and the derivatives, and that's what they've done. More interesting, probably, this guy, Jochen Sanyo, the BaFin. This is somebody who's been in office during the 2008-2009 crisis, probably learned something, and he's been talking up measures against speculation for quite a while. So I think we can probably regard him, Jochen Sanyo, as the motor force, S-A-N-I-O, at BaFin, B-A-F-I-N. The motor force, the idea man behind this thing. Let me just stress again, though, if people like Merkel and Schäuble can attack credit default swaps, anybody can. It means that the threshold, the bar for doing something positive in the midst of this crisis is now rather low. Any measure at all, anything you do to fight derivatives, hedge funds, zombie banks, speculation, it's positive. And again, if they can do it, just about anybody can. So take heart and ban derivatives, ban hedge funds. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.